Christine Brennan just exposed the WNBA in a major way.
Christine Brennan is one of the best sports writers in the country, has been for a long time.
Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge. And to then see this negativity, like why and what should have been done? I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings.
What if the biggest star in sports was secretly being pushed out of her own league? It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but for Caitlin Clark, it's a shocking and undeniable reality. She was supposed to be the WNBA's savior, the generational talent who would finally lift the league into the mainstream spotlight. She was the golden goose, ready to lay multi-million-dollar eggs for a business desperate for growth. Instead, she's found herself in the middle of a war she never asked for. A civil war where the league itself seems to be handing out the weapons to her enemies. The very people who should be protecting their greatest asset are now the ones leading the charge to dismantle her.
It's like someone handed them a winning lottery ticket, and they complained it wasn't in their favorite color.
And I look at the way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gino Auriemma, really tried to minimize her and were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA.
Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's a walking, breathing economic stimulus package for a league that was, for years, struggling for relevance. Before she arrived, the WNBA considered it a success to average around 400,000 viewers for a nationally televised game. That was the benchmark. With Clark on the court, games are routinely pulling in over 1.5 million viewers. Her debut peaked at 2.1 million, the highest viewership for a WNBA game in over 2 decades, and her draft alone drew a staggering 2.45 million people. To put that in perspective, more people watched her get drafted than watched the average game the year before. The numbers are astronomical. Merchandise sales haven't just increased, they've exploded by an unbelievable 234%. She is single-handedly responsible for sold-out arenas in cities she's only visiting. For the first time, every team in the league is flying on private charter flights, a luxury players had demanded for years, and it's a direct result of the revenue she generates. A finance professor calculated that as a rookie, Clark accounted for an insane 12% of all economic activity in the entire WNBA. By all logical accounts, the league should have rolled out a red carpet made of gold. Instead, they sharpened their knives and waited for her to walk across it.
So Caitlin Clark is way more important to the WNBA than Tiger Woods was to men's golf, even though he was huge to men's golf. And to then see this negativity, you'll probably, the next question would be, or your viewers and listeners are probably say, okay, so like why and what should have been done? And I looked seriously at the leadership of the WNBA. And how could you not be prepared for this moment? You've seen it happening in the Big Ten. You've seen it at Iowa. You see these TV ratings. 4 million more, as I said, watching the women than the men. I think it's worth repeating a few times because It is a stunning statistic, guys.
One white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, I always tell the players, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance, but certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players. Much more so than they were 5 years ago.
The welcome she received wasn't just chilly, it was openly hostile. The aggression wasn't hidden in subtle basketball plays, it was blatant and often malicious. The turning point for the public came in the form of a blindside hip check from Chicago Sky guard Chennedy Carter. It was a cheap shot, delivered with venom, while the ball was nowhere in sight. Carter had even been caught on camera calling her a BH just moments before the foul. This wasn't rookie hazing. This was a message sent loud and clear from the league's veteran class. You are not welcome here. The public outcry was deafening, yet the league's initial response was disturbingly weak, almost dismissive. Clark's own coach, Christy Sides, offered little more than a generic non-committal shrug in the post-game press conference, a reaction that many saw as a betrayal. But this wasn't an isolated incident. It was the most visible part of a disturbing pattern. Game after game, she is subjected to a level of physicality that goes beyond tough defense. She's hammered on drives to the basket, bumped and shoved off the ball, and rarely gets the star whistle that players of her caliber typically receive. It's reminiscent of how defenders used to bounce off Shaquille O'Neal without a call, but Clark doesn't have Shaq's physique to absorb it. The hits weren't just happening on the court. They were part of a larger, more insidious campaign happening behind the scenes.
It came out what she had to say in this book was going to shake the ground of the WNBA. She's been around for a very long time, and she knows the inner and outer workings of this league. Christine Brennan let it be known in multiple interviews that the WNBA was not ready for a superstar like Caitlin Clark.
The thing I don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case, the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark?
If you truly want to understand the depth of the resentment against Caitlin Clark, you don't need to watch the games. You just need to look at the All-Star vote. The results were a stunning expose of the league's internal politics. The fans, the people who actually buy the tickets, jerseys, and league passes overwhelmingly voted her #1 overall. The media, the journalists, and analysts who cover the game for a living ranked her as the 3rd best guard in the league. A fair assessment of a rookie finding her footing. But her own peers, the very players who share the court with her and benefit from her popularity, they ranked her a shocking 9th among guards. It wasn't just a snub, it was a coordinated act of professional pettiness, a unified statement that they refused to acknowledge the force of nature who is elevating all of their careers and bank accounts. Legendary sports analyst Dick Vitale didn't mince words, calling it pure jealousy from haters who can't stand to see her get the spotlight they feel they deserve. They will double team her for 40 minutes, treat her like the most dangerous threat on the floor, and then turn around and vote like she's a bench warmer. Their actions on the court reveal her importance, while their ballots reveal their contempt.
One of the big points in the book, I deal with all of this and my research and reporting, because I was perplexed as well. I mean, this is the greatest moment ever for the WNBA.
Yep.
We wish it happened sooner. Of course we wish it happened sooner. There were amazing players who, as you know, Ramona, I mean, both you guys know, were toiling in obscurity, the male-dominated mainstream sports media ignoring them.
From home, like everybody else. And I think, guys, that actually helped me understand as a journalist the fascination, because I've covered a lot over my career and been very fortunate to be at Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it, I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated, like, who is this? And I'm getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys, they want their daughters to play sports. I mean, good people, but just, And they're texting, are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance? And that told me something that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row, talking to a bunch of other journalists, that like, okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's everyone's fascinated, and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour, and it's all about a basketball player who happens to be a woman.
Perhaps the most bizarre and troubling chapter of this entire saga is the enemy who seems to be operating from within her own camp. Her head coach, Christy Sides, has been at the center of a storm of criticism for her puzzling and often counterproductive handling of her star player. In a league where coaches are expected to be fierce advocates for their stars, Sides has been conspicuously passive. She is frequently seen benching Clark during crucial moments of the game, pulling her out for extended stretches with no clear strategic reason. Her minutes are managed with a baffling inconsistency, and her role in the offensive system often seems designed to limit her impact, not unleash her world-class talent. This isn't just about managing a rookie's workload. It feels like a quiet, deliberate campaign to humble her. Many have pointed out that Sides was the coach who once sat idly by while Clark was getting poked and prodded in another game, showing little emotion or defense of her player. Now she's in charge. The situation has led fans and analysts to ask a terrifying question. Was this coach hired to build Caitlin Clark up, or was she strategically positioned to tear her down? It's a conspiracy theory that feels more like a documentary with each passing game. The chemistry between them is like oil and a dumpster fire, a cold war being fought with sneakers and clipboards.
Unauthorized, which is not ominous at all. You want it to be unauthorized because I can tell the truth, unvarnished. Caitlin's quoted throughout the book. She was great answering any question I asked her, but dealing with these important issues. So you've got a 74% black league. We understand this. I mean, I'm white. You know, Ramona, I think you guys are white. Yeah. We have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And I say that. Let's be brutally honest here. Here comes a white woman from Iowa, and she's going to be the biggest superstar. Now, absolutely, the spotlight's shining on her. Finally, it's shining on all these other players who deserved it for years but never got it. And that's a wonderful turn of events. But instead of focusing on the positives, sadly, the WNBA players, so many of them, not all,
and an antagonist. And I've argued that the NBA could use a little bit more of hero and villain to popularize the sport again. The WNBA does not need that, because for a lot of America, Caitlin Clark is the hero. And anyone that comes to Caitlin Clark's defense is a hero. And everyone that flagrantly fouls her, speaks poorly of her, acts like she's not great, is the villain. And then vice versa on that. How big of a part of the story is that when you look at the conflict surrounding Caitlin Clark?
With tensions escalating from every conceivable direction, from opponents, from peers, and from her own sideline, the whispers began to circulate. These weren't just idle rumors. They were whispers so potent and destructive they could crater the entire league. The unthinkable idea began to gain traction in media circles, fanned into flames by commentators like Colin Cowherd. What if the Indiana Fever traded Caitlin Clark? On the surface, the idea is certifiably insane. It's like Apple deciding to discontinue the iPhone, or a network canceling its highest rated show in history. But in the bizarre upside down world of the WNBA, where success is seemingly punished, it suddenly felt chillingly plausible. Trading Clark wouldn't just be a bad basketball move, it would be an act of league-wide self-immolation. It would doom the Indiana Fever to immediate and permanent irrelevance. But the damage would be far greater. It would be a flaming middle finger to the millions of new fans she brought to the sport, a clear signal that their interest and money are not wanted. It would be a loud and clear declaration that the WNBA would rather fail on its own bitter terms than succeed on hers. Keeping her in Indiana under this regime is like storing fireworks in a freezer. Nothing is going to explode, and everyone will be disappointed.
We got grown men on talking head shows wanting to fight each other over women's basketball and talking about it, right? We've got all these hot takes about all this going on, Christine. How big of a part of the story is that for you, and is that for this book?
I deal with it for sure in the book. And, you know, I think what we've seen is surprising to me, having covered women's sports as well as men's, you know, for the length of my career. And here comes Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book, I'd go into this in depth, a white woman from Iowa in a 74% black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and all these issues that are out there. No holds barred. I shy away from nothing.
This simmering conflict goes far deeper than simple locker room jealousy. This is about power and control. The WNBA's old guard, from the veteran players to the suits in the front office, appears to be terrified of one player becoming bigger than the league itself. They don't want a singular transcendent star in the mold of Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, a figure whose gravitational pull reshapes the entire sport around them. Instead, they seem to want a sanitized collectivist system where no single person shines too brightly, where the brand is the star. Caitlin Clark, with her wholesome Iowa background, her record-breaking jump shot, and her unprecedented mainstream appeal, fundamentally disrupts that narrative. She is not edgy in the corporate-approved way. She's a wholesome assassin from the heartland, and that doesn't fit the curated chaos they're trying to sell. So the system is fighting back. They are trying to sand down her edges, dim her spotlight, and subtly remind everyone that the machine is more important than any single part. It's a calculated, passive-aggressive campaign to break the hype, flatten the curve, and restore the old established hierarchy before it's too late. Now, Caitlin Clark is effectively trapped. She is enduring open hostility from her opponents, staggering pettiness from her peers, and a bizarre, inexplicable lack of support from her own head coach. The commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, sits courtside, nodding and smiling for the cameras, pretending not to see the slow-motion character assassination happening right in front of her. It's all part of the plan, a full-court PR detox designed to remind everyone that no player is bigger than the WNBA logo. Clark is the sole reason the league is experiencing this unprecedented boom, yet she is being treated like an unwanted guest at a party thrown in her honor. Every game has become a battle, not just against the 5 players on the other team, but against the very institution she is single-handedly saving. The question is no longer if the WNBA can handle the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, but rather how long Caitlin Clark will be willing to handle the WNBA's dysfunction. There is a breaking point for everyone, and if she finally decides she's had enough, she won't be the one to blame. She won't be a villain or a quitter. She'll be the one who escaped, leaving everyone else behind in the darkness of their own making, forced to reckon with the ashes of the golden age they chose to burn down themselves.